Thank you so much, Representative Velasquez. Thank you, Chairman Espaillat, for your leadership of the Hispanic Caucus. Also to my colleague Sylvia Garcia for putting this together. We miss her on the Judiciary Committee, where she served so capably on the Immigration Subcommittee. Thank you also to Lou Correa, who also is on the Immigration Subcommittee. As ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, I want to thank all my colleagues who exercised our constitutional authority and responsibility to conduct unannounced visits to ICE detention centers over this last in-district work period. As the Trump administration ramps up its mass deportation plan, sending masked men to snatch, kidnap, and disappear immigrants of all legal statuses across the country, it is critically important that we members of Congress continue to investigate what are supposed to be civil detention centers, but instead operate as private for-profit prisons with substandard medical care and they make billions of dollars, as Congresswoman Velasquez said, in contracts from this administration, detaining people of all legal statuses, including legal permanent residents, spouses of U.S. citizens, and people who have been living in this country for more than a decade. Today in America, we spend $3.4 billion in U.S. taxpayer money on immigration, quote, detention centers that are nothing more than prisons. And they make, as I said, enormous profits, all paid for by taxpayers. Just contrast that with only $840 million that we spend on the immigration judicial system, the ability to actually process people and have people get what they need in the courts. We are making it profitable to detain immigrants, most of whom are simply waiting for a bond hearing. That's why they're in there, not because they've been convicted of any crime, not because there's anything other than just waiting for a bond hearing. And so it's profitable to detain people even when it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, there's no charge. These detention centers make money over and over again. We in Congress intend to hold this administration and these for-profit prison companies accountable, and we will not be detained, deterred, or silenced in our responsibility and our authority to do so. As a longtime immigrant rights leader, even before I came to Congress, the organization that I ran did the first ever human rights abuses report on the GEO-run Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma. And last week, with my colleagues, Representatives Randall and Representative Dexter, we paid an unannounced visit there. Despite being delayed for an hour in entering the facility, which was completely needless, and we later heard an apology, and being denied the ability to speak to all the detainees that were there, we were able to speak to two people who I showed up with privacy waivers for them. The first woman has been in the country for 20 years. She was swept up in a raid at the workplace, and she was detained less than a week before she was going to get married to a U.S. citizen. The other person was a man who has been in this country for 31 years as a legal permanent resident. He's a proud member of the Machinists Union, and he's the primary provider for his U.S. citizen wife and his U.S. citizen children. These are not the so-called worst of the worst that Trump kept saying he was going to go after. These are simply people who love this country, who have been in this country for decades, who are married to U.S. citizens and have U.S. citizen children and do not understand why the country they love would be doing this to them. I think we all believe that if Americans knew who was being imprisoned in these for-profit prisons, they would be offended that their taxpayer dollars are being spent on this. And they would understand that if this administration can do this to people who have done no wrong, who are here with legal status, avoid due process, completely undermine all the protections that are built into our Constitution, they can do that to anyone. And that is why it is so important that we continue to shine a light on this, that we call it out, and that we refuse to allow the Trump administration to get away with what they are doing.